Welcome to the debate today. On my right is the affirmative side. The speakers are Annie Au, Donald Lee, David Hui, and Vincent Tan. The negative team is on my left. These speakers are Sylvia Lee, Alex Tan, Emily Zhong, and Tracy Lau. I'm the adjudicators of this debate. Each speaker may speak for 3 minutes. There will be a warning bell at 3 minutes and another bell at 3 minutes and 30 seconds. The topic of the debate is the use of nuclear energy is an essential part of the energy solution for climate change mitigation.
Good afternoon to ladies and gentlemen. The motion of today's debate is use of nuclear energy is an essential part of energy solutions for climate change mitigations. We are the affirmative teams to these motions. In order to make our debate more clear, I would like to define some wording first. According to the Oxford Dictionary, essential means that extremely important and absolutely necessary. Part is some belongs all. To the word mitigations, according to the IPCC report, it is an anthropogenic interventions to reduce the sources or to enhance the sink of greenhouse gases. As the demand of energy of the world is increasing, so we will not talking about how to reduce the sources, and we will focus on how to reduce the greenhouse gases emissions of the energy solutions. Our team will believe that reduce greenhouse gases emissions, nuclear energy is needed to be a sector of energy source plans. US President Barack Obama has said that nuclear power represents more than 70% of our non-carbon generated electricity. It is unlikely that we can meet our aggressive climate goal if we eliminate nuclear power as an option. To our team, we agree that renewable energy has low greenhouse gas emissions, but nuclear energy is an all-round solution to both climate change and also the increase of energy demands. To support our stand, our second speaker will talk about the nuclear energy is worthier to develop than renewable energy in both field of environment and also the economy. Our third speaker will talk about the feasibility of renewable energy, and our last speaker will generally give a summary of the view of our team. In addition, as we all know that the carbon emissions from combustion of fossil fuels is the major problem linked to climate change. For a coal-fired plants, which will emit 960 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour, whereas there are only 66 grams of CO2 kilowatt hours, which is nearly 1/15 of burning fossil fuel for energy. Due to the nuclear energy has lower carbon emission, it is sure that nuclear energy is need to be in energy source plans to reduce for climate change mitigations. Thank you.
In response to the low emission of carbon dioxide during electricity generation from nuclear power, it is clear that the affirmative side is ignoring the whole picture. It is true that there is no direct emission from the nuclear power plants. However, the nuclear fuel cycle does release carbon dioxide during mining, fuel enrichment, and plant construction. Uranium mining is one of the most carbon dioxide intensive industrial operation. According to the Ockel Institute in Germany, it is stated that in comparison to the renewable energy, Nuclear power energy released 4 to 5 times more carbon dioxide when considering the whole fuel cycle. Nuclear power may be able to reduce more carbon dioxide than the fossil fuel. However, it must not be the most effective one. Under these circumstances, how do nuclear energy be considered as the necessary part to solve the climate change problem? Apart from this, the affirmative side is clearly ignoring the safety issue of nuclear power plants. There are several serious accidents that were happened in the history of nuclear power, like the Chernobyl nuclear accident and in Ukraine in 1986 and the Fukushima nuclear crisis in 2011. Both accidents involve hundreds and thousands of people that will be affected by the large amounts of radioactive particles from the reactors. And the environment and the nearby will be affected too. And admittedly, some progress has been made in increasing the safety standard of the nuclear plants. However, the reactors can never be inherently safe, and problems still exist. So we believe that the nuclear power is not an essential part of for saving the climate change mitigation. We believe that renewable energy can serve the same role in the solution of solving the climate change problem. There are some countries that are using renewable energy rather than nuclear energy in sustaining their country's electricity, like Norway, Iceland, and New Zealand. And Iceland use renewable energy for their energy for 100% for their energy generation, and primarily from hydropower and from the geothermal power. And so we believe that these countries has proven the successful of renewable energy to sustain the whole country, and nuclear energy should not be the essential part in solving the climate change problem. Thank you.
Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, the opposite side stated that the other types of non-renewable energy can serve the same role of nuclear energy. We are utterly disagreed on this point. First, other types of non-renewable energy are much less stable than nuclear energy. The solar panel is totally useless when there's no sunlight. The wind farm is totally useless when there's no wind. But nuclear energy can provide low-cost, predictable power at stable prices. It can provide power 24 hours and 7 days and need to be shut down for maintenance only. Second, nuclear energy has a lower impact on the environment than the others. Nuclear plants do not emit harmful gases, require a relatively small area, and effectively minimize and negate other impacts. Moreover, nuclear power plants provide land and habitat preservation. Because nuclear power plants produce a large amount of electricity in a relatively small space, they require significantly less land for operation than all other energy sources. For instance, solar and wind farms must occupy substantially more land and must be sited in geographically unpopulated areas. Far from energy demand, to build the equivalent of a 1,000 megawatt nuclear plant, a solar park will have to be larger than 55,000 acres, and a wind farm will have to be 150,000 acres or larger. Also, uranium is a concentrated, low-volume fuel source requiring fuel incursion into the land for extraction or transport. Nuclear plants are so environmentally benign, and they enable endangered species to live and thrive nearby. Such endangered species as osprey, bald eagles, red cockaded woodpecker, and even the beach tiger beetle have found a home at nuclear power plants. That's why other renewable energy resources cannot serve the same role. Also, the opposite side also states that using nuclear energy is very dangerous. However, nuclear power does prevent more death than it causes. Using nuclear plant in place of fossil fuel energy sources, such as coal, has prevented some 1.8 million air pollution-related deaths globally and could save millions of more lives in coming decades. And the other point is that nuclear energy can produce much more energy than other renewable energy. Very small amount of uranium can produce a huge amount of energy. About 28 gram uranium releases as much amount of energy as is generated by 100 metric tons of coal. Theoretically, in the fission of uranium-235 nucleus, the amount of energy released is about 16 million times as much as when a carbon atom burns. In conclusion, I urge an affirmation of the resolution that use of nuclear energy is an essential part of energy solution for climate change mitigation. Thank you, everyone.
Although the affirmative side says that the nuclear power can generate a large amount of energy and have a very stable supply of the world's demand of electricity, actually, it is controversial of constructing so many nuclear power plants for the demand of the world. And the key idea should be that actually nuclear energy as well as the heat is not the only product generated during the process. The contamination of the environment as well as the nuclear waste should also be considered. For the nuclear waste, actually, this waste is being stored in a closed space and disposing underneath the earth. And these wastes needs to take time for a long time to decay, while their time is needed for diminishing the radioactivity. And the decay takes a time from a range of the couple of hours to millions of years. And even human may not have a chances of contact with these harmful substances. And actually, some of the waste is being piled up and the radioactivity is being accumulated and stored somewhere in the planet, which serves as a potential threat to the human and act just like a bomb timer. And by studying a past history, we found that this bomb timer was exploded before. Since then, there are several accidents regarding to this radioactive waste. And we see that this waste is mainly caused by some natural disaster, which brings the deeply buried waste being exposed to the ground and have a direct impact to the human beings and other organisms. Other than the nuclear waste, the contamination of the environment next to the nuclear plant should also be considered by using this dangerous, powerful generation method. By considering it, actually, this contamination can be shown to be dangerous according to research funded by the United States National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health Center. And this examination experiment is conducted by studying the health condition of the workers in laboratory who are handling the nuclear waste. And the result shows that there's a strong evidence between the low exposure of the radiation and the mortality suffering from cancer rates. And this message conveyed by the research, we may find that it's just like when humans have and when the environment is being contaminated by this continuously radiation exposed by the nuclear plants, the water source and the soil will undergo the drainage system, go through different land areas until they enter into the ocean. And this kind of the contamination is harmful to the human. When they eat taking it, it will serve as a potential threat without any sense and the harmful effects dealing with these situations. Other than any other renewable energy, these cases will not happen in them because the most of the sources comes from nature. For example, the solar energy, tidal power, and the wind energy comes from the source of the sunlight, water tides, and the wind respectively. And the process is safe and will not generate any strongly harmful substances which is fatal to the human health and affecting the whole ecosystem. And so, to compare with it, actually nuclear power is not a good solution to be considered into the future. By considering the low risk of the alternative of renewable power and energy generation method, nuclear power should not be a safe and a reliable power source which should be used to mitigate the climate change.
Ladies and gentlemen, today our motion is that the use of nuclear energy is an essential part of the energy solutions for climate change mitigation. It is beyond dispute that finding a clean and efficient energy, which have low or even no greenhouse gases emission, is very crucial to solve global warming. As our first speaker, Annie, has mentioned that the use of nuclear energy can greatly reduce the CO2 emission by human when compared to the use of fossil fuel. So our team believes that it is predictable that the fossil fuel will not be one of the major energy solutions we use in the future. On the other hand, our second speaker, Donald, has also mentioned that the nuclear energy surpasses other renewable energy because of its high efficiency and its little impact to the environment. Our honorable opponent, however, has argued that the nuclear waste produced during the process of generating electricity are hard to handle as they take up much space to store, and they also need time to decay into non-radioactive. We, as the affirmative side, has never denied the fact that the use of nuclear energy will inevitably produce some nuclear waste. But these radioactive waste can be harmless under careful and proper treatment and handle. Nuclear reprocessing technology is one of the best ways in dealing with the radioactive wastes. After the reprocessing process, the nuclear waste can be reused as fuel in nuclear fusion. This recycle process not only decreases the amount of nuclear waste, but it also saves the fuel it needed in the nuclear fusion process. In addition to this, the reprocessing technology can also greatly reduce the size of nuclear radioactive wastes, so that the space needed to store them is greatly reduced. Besides, the time needed for the nuclear waste to decay is even shortened after they are reprocessed. So what the opposition side said is just ridiculous. And back to our case, ladies and gentlemen, our team believes that nuclear energy is much more practical when compared to other renewable energy. It is obvious that each renewable energy has its own limitations. For example, the application of solar power are subjected to much variability, such as the cloud covers, the weather, and its cost to store the extra energy and maintenance are much more higher when compared to the use of nuclear energy. And for wind power, the location of the windmills are also limited by many factors, such as the prevalent wind directions, the migration routes of some bird, or even the distance of the settlements. Nuclear power, however, has less limitation, as its operation mode is more or less the same as a power plant. As long as the nuclear plant has its fuel and some water for cooling, it can generate electricity in any place and any time. So, ladies and gentlemen, because of the fuel limitations that the use of nuclear power has, it is foreseeable that it can be widely used around the world. So, today's motion must stand. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, compared to other renewable energy like solar energy and wind energy, nuclear power seems to have less limitation, as stated by our affirmative team. However, the truth is, nuclear power has its own sets of restrictions. In many countries, nuclear power plants have to be built on the coast since a ready source of cooling water is needed. This geographic limitation indeed will raise the risk of plant damages by flood and tsunamis. The Fukushima nuclear accident in 2011, as mentioned by our team, is a classic example for this. Any power plant's damages will cause risk to human life, and this can simply be caused by choosing the wrong location for nuclear power plants. When taking this risk into account, we should definitely reconsider the necessity of including nuclear power as the solution for climate change. The geographic limitation for nuclear power is not the only problem for using nuclear energy. Low cost effectiveness is the Achilles heel of nuclear power. Some may claim that the electricity generated from nuclear power has a lower price compared to coal, natural gas, and other renewable energy. But is this the truth again? The full cost of electricity generated from nuclear power has been severely underestimated. There are hidden costs that have not been counted, including waste disposal, decommissioning, and insurance for accidents. When taking all these considerations, you will see the large cost of nuclear energy generation. Furthermore, the relatively low price of electricity generated from nuclear power has been supported by the significant subsidy from the government. Yet, even with the financial support, the nuclear industry is still not considered as economic viable, according to a recent report from the Union of Concerned Scientists. This report discovered that there are more than 30 subsidies supporting every stage of the nuclear fuel cycle, from uranium mining to long-term waste storage. Taking away all these subsidies, you will see the true massive cost of using nuclear power to generate electricity. Put aside of the expensive cost, next we should ask, how green is nuclear energy? As mentioned by our team before, when considering the whole nuclear fuel cycle, generating electricity from nuclear power released more than just a little greenhouse gases. In 1995, after a year-long review for the case of nuclear power, the UK government concluded that nuclear power is one of the least cost-effective ways to cut carbon dioxide emission. After 20 years until now, there is still absence of credible studies to support the effectiveness of using nuclear to reduce carbon dioxide emission. To solve the climate change, we should focus on more cost-effective energy sources. When there's other more economic energy that can truly reduce the carbon dioxide emission, nuclear power is definitely not the best option to use to solve our climate change. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, our opponents have come up with various points of view concerning the benefits of using nuclear energy, but they are neglecting the keywords in the motion, essential, which was defined as extremely necessary and absolute importance by the first speaker from the affirmative side. Under such definitions, the points raised by our opponents are not meeting the requirements of being essential, while our side has already proposed a list of sound evidence showing that nuclear energy is not extremely important and not absolutely necessary. And I will sum up the three major arguments. The affirmative side has claimed that using nuclear energy can reduce carbon emissions. However, this is ignoring the fact that carbon dioxide is already emitted during mining, fuel enrichment, and plant construction, as pointed out by our first speaker. Also, the potential danger of using nuclear energy is much higher than fossil fuels and other renewable energy, with the concrete examples of the nuclear crisis in Japan in 2011. So, nuclear energy not only failed to mitigate climate change, but also destroy the environment permanently. Then, it is obvious that nuclear energy is not extremely necessary. However, the affirmative side insists that nuclear energy has lower environmental impacts during daily operations and has stable supply of electricity. But the operations of nuclear plants not only generate electricity, but also release radioactive substances and nuclear waste, as suggested by our second speaker. Such disposals of waste and release of radiations contaminate the giant system and soil, leading to unforeseeable consequences. But all these disasters can be avoided. All these threats on the environment can be eliminated by replacing nuclear energy with renewable energy. Then the affirmative side responded by saying that radioactive waste can be recycled, and nuclear energy is more practical than other sources of energy. However, our first speaker pointed out that with the criterion of geographical locations, like near to coastal areas for source of cooling water, it is not as practical as our opponents have mentioned. Also, it is not cost-effective to operate nuclear plants. The operation requires lots of subsidy from
uranium mining to long-term waste storage, the ineffectiveness is supported by the report from the UK government as well. Based on all this evidence, how can we possibly say that nuclear energy is mitigating climate change when it is in fact intensifying? Therefore, nuclear energy is not that necessary or important when there are other environmental friendly renewable energy, and the use of nuclear can potentially lead to many irreversible negative impacts. With so much points that are not fitting the definitions of being essential, the arguments given by the affirmative side are not convincing at all. So, today's motion, the use of nuclear energy is an essential part of the energy solutions for climate change mitigation must not stand. Thank you.
Good afternoon, honorable judge and fellow debaters. In today's debate, the affirmative team has proven that the use of nuclear energy is an essential part of energy solutions to climate change mitigation. Nuclear energy can replace the use of fossil fuels, and it has lower CO2 emissions. Other than that, nuclear energy is more stable and has a higher efficiency than the renewable energies. At the current situation, the demand of electricity is rapidly increasing. Therefore, the amount of power generation is going to increase in the future. To support the huge amount of energy consumption, a sufficient and a stable energy source is needed. Currently, both fossil fuels and nuclear power are the major sources of electricity generation. However, the nuclear power plants has no greenhouse gas emission nor any air pollutants. Moreover, the solid radioactive wastes can be well treated by carefully handling, which can be managed more easily than those wastes from burning coals. Therefore, nuclear energy is cleaner and more preferable energy source than burning fossil fuels. Without nuclear energy, the world will entirely rely on fossil fuels, especially coal, to meet the basic requirement of electricity. Also, the renewable energy are either intrinsically or economically unsuitable for wide applications because of their dispersed properties. The wind and solar energy occupies large areas of land, but they only provide a small proportion of energy. The hydroelectricity can only apply to some places which have large rivers. So, nuclear power is the most cost-effective and the most practical energy source compared to the renewable energies. Currently, the safety standards of the nuclear power plants are much higher than the previous decades. Nuclear accidents are very uncommon to happen now. So, it is unnecessary to worry about the safety issues of nuclear power. Therefore, before we can find new sources of energy or new technology, nuclear energy is the most practical energy solution of mitigating the climate change.
That concludes the debate today. Thank you very much.